Difficulties. We were managed by an absolute shyster of a manager. I mean, it really wasn't very funny at all, as it turns out, because I was not a participating member of the writing partnership in this band, but the manager, the so-called manager, had not protected us legally, so when the taxman came for the money, I was responsible for the money, having earned none of the money. And I was freaking out because I didn't have any money. I'd never made any money. I had no chance of ever, at that time, you know, I had no possibility of giving the taxman what he was due. So when I was hit up by Butch and the band, I had no choice really in my mind. I was like, I have no future, I have no job, I didn't stick in at school, I had nothing, so I had no choice, you know, so I leapt on a plane and went to America with 3 men I didn't know. I wouldn't advise anyone ever doing that.
If you were talking to your niece, you'd tell us never do that.
I just don't recommend it. I mean, I was really lucky in that they turned out great. You know, they're great people, but I mean, it could have been really ugly for me, and it wasn't. But anyway, cut to this shyster of a manager ended up in jail, and I ended up with mad £350,000 tax debt, which with my first cheque from Garbage I had to pay off to stop my bandmates from being bankrupt. They had children and I couldn't let that happen to them, so I'm still bitter about it. I'm glad I did the right thing, but I'm still bitter about it.
So that was your first Garbage paycheck?
Yeah. Yeah.
And,
trust me, it wasn't out of the kindness of my heart. I just felt like it had to be done. It was sort of a decent thing to do, but I resented every penny and still do.
And how much
life right now, you're battling issues that I have never had to battle in my life ever, and that is unjust and outrageous. And again, this is something we must all attend to. The racism in our Western world, in all over the globe, we have to attend to. So I'm not putting myself on a par with Serena by any stretch of the imagination. However, watching how she's been dealt with has been really interesting and instructive to me, because whenever I have pushed for my own rights or pushed up or like had an outburst, it has been described in unbelievable terms. I'm crazy, she's frothing at the mouth, she's out of control, you know, just because you express your distaste. And that I enjoyed, is probably a sick word to use, but I certainly endured a lot of that kind of journalism, you know. If I pushed up against a male journalist who was being, you know, really insulting and rude to me, I was crazy. You know, I was out of control, I was a diva, I was a cunt. I mean, it's like outrageous, you know. But again, I think, luckily, things with social media, things are starting to be magnified and illuminated that sat in the shadows for so long, and that's why I'm so grateful, actually, to social media for all its faults and failings. It's doing something wonderful and really valuable in our culture currently. And I'm excited for where things are going to go for new generations, because women aren't going to tolerate this bullshit any longer.
I interview a lot of rising female artists who say this as well. Whenever a journalist is describing a new male act, they'll just talk about their sound and where they're from. But whenever they're describing a new female act, they want to know who they've been working with, who's written their songs, who their producer is.
Was that you, Amanda? How the fuck did I know that was Amanda Palmer in the audience? But it's true. I mean, you know this as a fellow artist. You've been through the same journey as I have. You know, it's like all about who you're fucking. I was asked often which member of the band of Garbage I was fucking. I was like, are you fucking kidding me?
She was the one with the shorts.
I mean, I'm not being funny. When I think about some of the interviews we all endured, my bandmates as well, would be like, if you had to sleep with one member of Garbage, which one would it be? And in my own idiocy and my own naivety, I would answer the question.
Who was it?
Steve!
Steve. Wow. I have some questions written down about press. I'll skip them and skip to, did you really shit in your ex-boyfriend's coffee?
I really did.
You did it.
Thank you and good night. No.
Successful. Well, I should rephrase this. No matter how successful I've been as an artist, I have never felt I belonged. I've never felt I've arrived. I've never felt accepted. I always feel like I'm pushing up against a wall. And I used to think that was a flaw. Now I feel like it's been the most helpful tool in my kit for the entire duration of my career.
It was a bold album as well, because pop around that time was kind of stale, and these indie bands were kind of singing about quite laissez-faire things, and you were out there singing about androgyny, etc. There's a quote from you in the book where it says, you've always felt aggrieved at being born a female, and then you were like messing with your image, cutting your hair. I mean, what was going through your mind when you were kind of shaking up your image at that time? Because you'd become very fixed as an icon.
I mean, I guess the same thing that's always going through my mind. I mean, look at me today. My niece was laughing at me going, you dress like a little girl. I guess I've never enjoyed, and it's going back to this sort of idea of gender conformity, you know, I've never enjoyed being in the box. You know, I don't like being locked in a cage. I don't like being told I have to, well, girls don't act like that. Well, yeah, they fucking do. You know, girls don't enjoy sex. Yeah, actually, we really fucking do. You know, girls, you know, you should learn to smile more. Go fuck yourself. I don't want to smile. You know, things like that. It sounds trite and I sound like I'm being silly, but I really believe it. You know, I didn't enjoy being a little girl from day one, which I'm sure is why I've always been attracted to the LGBTQ community. I've always been attracted to... Like, the second I learned about gender fluidity, I was like, this makes so much sense to me, you know. And what I'm so grateful for is that I have lived long enough to start seeing how our world really is changing and evolution really is taking place, and that the world is changing for young people. They're not coming into the same environment that I did, or we did. And that, you know, girls don't even have to be girls anymore, and men don't have to be men. We can be anything we want to be in, you know, between the pillar and the post. And I just think it's such a relief for everybody, you know. And so, you know, with our third record, we did talk a lot about, we talk about transgender actually with Cherry Lips, and we talk about androgyny, and these were themes that I felt just instinctively attracted to and always have done. And I'm really lucky in that I work with men who feel the same way. And these were taboo subjects that nobody really talked about back then, and I'm really grateful we actually had the balls to talk about it, you know, because now when we go and play, you know, shows, not so much on this tour because this is a specific tour around a specific record, but when we go and play our last tour, we're singing about all kinds of really current issues as a band that's been around for fucking 25 years, you know, and it's such a great feeling to be progressive in that regard, you know. It's sort of like for all the things that people were like, huh? You know, 15 years ago are now like, yay, garbage! So, you know, stick to your guns is all I'm saying. It's just, if you feel it in your soul, follow it through. Meetings with writers and producers, and one day I walked into a studio in LA and I met Greg Kurstin. And Greg and I just immediately had this like crazy chemistry, like you do with some people. And we bonded over Top Chef. And we just loved each other, and he and I decided we were going to try and write a song and see how it went. So I went to his house and we wrote a song in about 5 minutes, and cut a long story short, we accumulated 12 or 14 songs and came back to Geffen and said, listen, we've got 14 songs, we've got amazing players, like we had this incredible band, and we can make a record for you in a week. And now that's ambitious by anybody's standards, but this is what we felt confident we could deliver. And the record company, Buffoon, said, well, who's this Greg Kurstin? And And I said, well, he's this producer that I've met. Well, what hits? Has he had hits? And I was like, no, he hasn't had hits. But he's a really gifted musician. And he said, well, play me some stuff. So we played him some demos. He was like, yeah, I could do that. Literally, we're in a business meeting and he's listening to tracks we've written and he's like, yeah, I could do that. Yeah, I could play that. And we were like, this is fucking weird. And so to cut a long story short, again, he said, once the meeting was over and one of the people present at the meeting went into the male toilets and saw my husband and said something very strange about his body parts. It was all very surreal and peculiar, and we ran out of the record company just going, what the fuck just happened? They called me up 24 hours later and said, we don't want you to make a record with Greg Kurstin for $10,000 in a week. We feel like you could be the new Annie Lennox. We feel like you are a pop star. You could have this massive global appeal. And, who is this person anyway? Cut to, a month later, Greg Kurstin has a huge record with Lily Allen. Past that, he has a huge record with fucking every single pop star you can possibly imagine, and culminated in he's won multiple Grammys and has not been out of the charts ever since.
He's doing all right for himself, yeah.
Yeah, and also is, by the way, an incredible jazz musician and just insane chops. He's an incredible musician and a very, very good friend of mine. But anyway, suffice to say, now of course, 6 months later, they're coming grubbing back at Greg Kurstin, offering him a label deal on the same label that wouldn't fucking allow him to make a record with me. I mean, it's just insanity. That is the modern record business for you. They don't know shit, and they're all idiots.
Do you feel in your heart of hearts that it would have been a great record?
I'm grateful we didn't make it, because it would have taken me off course. I probably would never have gone back to the band. Just knowing Greg, the kind of musician he is, he's insane. I could do anything with him. But I am ultimately, I believe in a band. I believe in the chemistry. I believe in the struggle, and believe in the journey of a group of people where you have to compromise, where you're forced to question yourself. And it's not necessarily about the possibilities. It's more about what is, and how do we take what is, our small little knuckle of talent, and how do we make it beautiful? That to me is what's so spectacular about a band, and what's kind of being lost now, because it's all about just money making and being huge. And bands don't make money in the same way as solo artists do for record labels, so that we're becoming more and more obsolete. They don't want bands because they're too expensive. Why have 6 people in a hotel when you can have one lonely soul? So I'm grateful it didn't work out, as it turns out. But you do what you can to survive at the time, and that was. I wasn't really speaking to the band. They weren't really speaking to me. We were on hiatus. I wanted to make music. I was desperate to be creative. So, who'd turn down a major label at that point? Nobody. Or maybe some people would. But I'm an artist. I want to keep moving.
So how do you describe the mood when the band reconvened?
Buoyant. It was lovely. It was. The thing is, too, there was so much personal stuff going on. My mum got diagnosed with a really aggressive form of dementia, and it just cut me off at the legs. And, I'm grateful we were on hiatus, because had I been working when my mum was that ill, I would have probably lost my mind. So I feel like I've been so lucky in that we did fail when we failed, because to absorb a mother's death, as I'm sure many of you in this audience have experienced yourselves, when she's been a great mother, when she's been your best friend, when she has been the only person in the world who will really put herself in front of the oncoming traffic for you, to lose that is very, very complicated and painful and difficult. And so, during our hiatus, this was also going on. When the record label said that they didn't want me to make a record with Greg and they wanted me to be the new Annie Lennox, I literally said to my husband, "Fuck it, I'm done. I'm not going to compromise. I'm not going to go and make a pop record. I've no interest in it, absolutely none." And I was so fortunate that I went to Gwen Stefani and I really worked certainly back then, really good pals. And I had been invited to Gwen's house for a baby shower. And I was at Gwen's house and I met this man and we were bonding over James Ellroy, the writer, who had written The Black Dahlia. And this man that I met was working on a screenplay based on The Black Dahlia. And I was obsessed with James Ellroy. So we got talking at this party, and it turns out he was a script writer in Hollywood. I mean, like a joke, yeah? Like, yeah, this is like a silly joke, silly story. And he said to me, I'm working on this show about robots, and I think...
What show was that show?
Well, it's Sarah Connor Chronicles, based on the Terminator franchise, and he said, I think you'd make an amazing robot. And I was thinking, thank you. And he said, would you ever be interested in acting? And of course, I'd acted when I was young, and I was like, yeah, I would act. Thinking for a second, this will never come to anything, you know? And then, so yeah, this whole period of hiatus was really mad, because, so I'd met this man at this party, and then something really awful happened to one of my best friends, where her husband unexpectedly died of a really strange virus in his bed, young, handsome, virile, had an 18-month-old baby, died in his bed unexpectedly. And I went over back home to be with my friend and look after her family, because she had really young kids. So I was there for a couple of weeks, and you know, when anyone who's witnessed a friend lose their spouse, you know, or anyone for that matter, it's dark, and it's a really oppressive, horrible feeling. And I get the call saying, you know, they want you to come in for an audition, and I just so happened to be going back that day, so I went back to LA, I auditioned, I got the fucking part, I couldn't believe it! But it was all sort of caught up in this mad moment of me. My mother was dying, my friend had just lost her young husband, friends of ours, their 6-year-old child had just been diagnosed with cancer, and I just literally felt like my whole life was sort of falling into this dark cave, you know. So at the end of all that, we decided to get the band together again and make a record, because we were also sort of sickened by reality, and we have a joke about nothing ever bad happens when you're on tour. So we got back together and everyone was really buoyant, because it's just escape. It's escape into the unknown, it's escape into adventure and joy. So it was wonderful.
Would you ever act again?
I'd love to act again, but it's not my forte. You know, I mean, people are always trying to get me to do stuff, including the showrunner from Sarah Connor Chronicles, and he's always putting me up for these amazing roles, and then I go to audition and I get stage fright, and I just can't deal.
What do you think would be the perfect part for you?
I don't know. I have no idea, but I'd like to do something weird and spooky and sci-fi, and I don't know. I'm a musician, that's my thing.
Girls talk shit when you're back up against it.